So the psalmist is showing us on today that there is deliverance in the word of God. You're asking God to order your steps. He's ordered it. You've been in it for a while. Now he said, because you've been in this for a while, your deliverance is going to come to you. Oh, yes, you're going to have a Job season. You're going to feel down. You're going to be a little broken. But on the same note, God is in the midst of that. It's a new beginning for you. It's a new life. New beginning, new life, and it's a new day. Welcome back to a time of empowerment and inspiration, where the word of the Lord is a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your pathway. I am so delighted to be here today for this powerful, powerful month with these awesome, awesome women. Now, you know the theme for this month of May is Uplifting Strong Women. I forgot to include the sub-theme is a woman's work. We've been having a blast up in here. I'm like, I have to take a breather because it's been so powerful and so anointed. It's like you don't even know what's in a person till you start listening to them. And believe me, I know you've been blessed through every broadcast because everyone been coming in their own way with so much power and authority. It has impacted people, and I thank you for tuning in. So we're going to get started today. I have a good friend of mine here, Bekki, and she's going to share today. I'm going to ask her to tell a little bit about herself.
Well, I am a mother of 3 recently adult children. They're all between 21 and 18. My baby just turned 18, and I'm having a little hard time with it.
Yeah.
I'm also newly married.
Yes.
It's my second marriage, and it's an adjustment, but it's been great.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a hospital chaplain, and that's one of my very favorite things in the world because I get to walk with people through the most difficult, most painful parts of their life, and there's such an anointing on that ground that it's beyond words.
Yes. Thank you so much. And so Bekki is going to also share today, and again, I know what Bekki's going to talk about, so I know what she's going to share is going to be so awesome and powerful. So we're going to give the floor over to Bekki so she can share today.
Well, to make a long story short, I've been through 3 stages in my life. I was a victim, and then I was a survivor, and now I am someone who's overcome. And to give you the long stories, when I was 17, I was violently raped. I was at a party with a bunch of friends, and having a good time. I was in college, and next thing I know, found myself all alone in a room with somebody that I didn't want to be in a room with. And he pinned me down and he raped me. And I'm going to tell you, when something like that happens, your life changes irrevocably.
Yes.
It's a violation spiritually,
Yes.
mentally, emotionally, and physically. It covers everything. And everything that I knew to be true the day before was not true the day after. And for me, I was young. It was such a difficult thing to go through.
Sure.
And they don't prepare you for that.
No.
Nobody says, well,
No.
this might happen.
Yes.
And if it does, here's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I struggled, and I reached out to my friends. And the first thing my friends said was, well, were you leading him on? Are you sure he wasn't, he didn't just get the wrong idea?
Sure.
And I said, well, no. And I reached out to my pastor at the time, and the first thing my pastor said to me was, well, you shouldn't have been drinking, Bekki. That kind of thing doesn't happen if you hadn't been drinking. And it was just really, really difficult for me, and I had a friend who suggested that I see a counselor. And I had a counselor who, after about 2.5 sessions, looked at me and said, you're really too smart to have put yourself in that kind of situation.
Wow.
You were really smarter than that. And after that point, it was, I shut down. I shut down. I had to see this gentleman in school. He was in 2 of my classes. I had 2 months of the semester left. And so I did the only thing that I knew how to do, and I completely walled off that, and I didn't realize how much it impacted me, how much even walling it off and going through, how much it impacted the rest of my life.
Yes.
I was incredibly intimacy avoidant. I didn't want anybody to touch me. I wasn't fond of hugs, even from friends.
Yes, yes.
I didn't want to have anything to do with males. I was, which, you know, at the time was probably not a horrible thing, but, you know, I didn't want to date.
Yes.
I had a horrible commitment issue, and I had personal space issues. You know, there were all these things that I didn't even realize came from that one moment. You know, and I actually didn't deal with it until I was probably in my 30s. When I was in my early 30s, I came to know Christ. And I remember at that point in time, it started coming back, and I remember thinking, God, why did you let that happen? You know, I read stories in the Bible of God making a donkey talk to create good.
Yes.
And it, to me, at that point, that he would allow that to happen to me flew in the face of what I knew to be a good, kind, caring, and loving God.
Sure.
And it made me, I mean, and of course I felt guilty for asking, but it made me ask, where were you? And why? Why did you sit there and do nothing?
Yes, yes.
And it was hard, and God and I had that conversation. It was more of a one-sided conversation for a long time. And I remember I was in my car, and I was driving to pick my kids up from school. And, you know, as you do, you talk in the car, you talk to yourself. At least I do.
Yes. We all do think
and,
out loud.
Yes. And I had one of those moments, and it was almost as clear as day. You know, God said to me, if I didn't let you go through it, how would others know that they could too?
Bekki.
And that moment, it was like an aha moment. You know, it was like, okay, that I can take. You know, I can handle that. And I mean, it was still difficult, but I could handle that. And, you know, I fast forward, and I went to a therapist, and I absolutely, because there's no way you can get through something like that on your own.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's so many nuances, and even now there are so many things that I'm learning. You know, as part of my CPE, I learned that sexual assault victims have the same PTSD symptoms as combat veterans.
Oh, absolutely.
And that to me was like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not, you know, I'm not overly dramatic. And, you know, learning that even something as innocuous as going to the dentist can often be traumatic for somebody who's been in that situation because of this, you know, the scenario. And I've learned how to accept the parts of me that have irrevocably changed because of what I went through.
Yes, yes.
But in accepting, I can also deal with that. You know, I can also say, well, I understand that if I go to a party, I'm gonna feel claustrophobic if there are too many people around me. So I bring friends, and I'll go to a party with my daughter, and she knows she's my bodyguard. She's my. I'm gonna
Only
give
go
them
so close.
Yeah, like you know, my people will stand around me, and they'll help that way, and that's how I cope with life, and that's how I handle it. You know, and
so let me ask you, because this is deep, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was so honored when I reached out to Bekki, because we don't see each other. You know, she does the contingent work. I only see her occasionally. But when I was fasting prayer, God dropped you in my heart to pose this and ask, would you be willing to come and share with the viewers, because I can imagine how many people you're helping now.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of people that's been in this position, and the stigma would be, you know, you shouldn't have been there anyways, or you shouldn't have been drinking, because then you wouldn't have been in that position. But I'm told when a person is rape or domestic violence, if you say no, the answer is no.
Yes. Absolutely. And one of the things I tell people all the time is, you know, if my home is burgled, if somebody comes in and steals my things, the first thing that the insurance company or the police asks me is, well, did you leave the door unlocked? Because if you left the door unlocked, you kind of might have been asking for it. You know, because nobody asks that. Nobody assumes that. Everybody assumes, well, you were robbed, you were violated. And it's the same thing. You know, if it doesn't matter if you've been drinking, it doesn't matter what you've been wearing, it doesn't matter any of that. If you say no, that's it.
That's it.
It's done.
Let me ask you, when you were going through that, you were only what age?
I was 17.
7? Wow, you was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
You was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
When you were going through that, what was your first day like? And I'm not trying to make you go relive anything, but there's someone out here now that have gone through this and currently going through this, and they still don't. They feel like they're losing their mind. They don't know what to do. What was it like? And I'm not trying to make you relive it. What was it like that day after you had to pull yourself from that situation? What happened? Where were you? What happened?
I was back at my my friend's apartment because I was staying with my friend, and I showered probably 8 times because there's this filth on you.
Yes.
There's this filth on you that you just can't get off. You know, it doesn't matter how many times you shower, you can still feel the hands. You can still feel everything.
Yes.
And it's something that you need to get off, but it won't come off.
Won't come off.
No. And
Keep going.
it's, you know, that's why to me, it's such a huge violation because your body's not safe. Your emotions not safe, and your spirit's not safe anymore. Everything has been violated, and it takes. It was probably a good week before I stopped, even for a moment, feeling him on me.
Yes. Wow. So during that time, how did you cope mentally? Because at the time, I'm sure you were suffering from post PTSD. You even if you wasn't given a prognosis. What did you do for that week while going through that until you were able to come to grips that this really happened to me, and I can get up from here. I don't feel him anymore. I don't smell his scent, because I've heard people say I smell the scent for months, or I've seen him in my dream for months. What did you do through that process that whole week, if you can remember back then?
I can remember, and it was probably one of the only things that got me through it. Is I remember thinking that he destroyed so much of me, but that I was going to choose to get up in the morning because I was not going to let him take that from me. I was going to get up in the morning, and I was going to go to class, and I was going to continue to do all of those things because that was what I could choose to not let him take from me. Because he had already taken so much. I was taking what little I could back. And that little that I could take back was living a daily life, living, you know, I'm not gonna say a normal life, but what a normal life would have looked like prior. And it was getting up, it was doing the things that I needed to do to get to a point where it became less and less raw.
And let me ask you this: when I'm sure you had to share this with your parents. At the time, did you share with your parents?
I did not. I actually did not tell my mother until I was 35 years old.
Wow. So I'm bringing this up for a reason.
And I'll tell you why. It's because I couldn't handle one more person telling me that it was my fault.
And that's where I was going to go, because I hear a lot of women. You know, we get cases.
Absolutely.
We get a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And I'm not being, biased or anything. No, we get a lot of cases like this. And as a chaplain, we get all the cases, but these cases are very, very sensitive because the individual do not want to disclose it to the parent. Can you elaborate more about that?
Well, you know, for me, I was at a party that my parents would not have let me go to. I was, drinking. Obviously, my parents would not have let me do that. So a lot of times these situations happen in a place where your mother might have not let you, or a situation they might not have wanted you to be in. And immediately we have this fear, and I had this fear that if I tell her, the first thing she says is, "I told you not to go to the party," and then it's my fault, and there's only so much of it you can hear before it's too much. And and the best thing that you can tell a person who's been through that is, it's not your fault.
Very good.
That is honestly the one thing that they need to hear is this isn't on you.
Very good, very good.
You know, and
So in that case, you're 17, you had to go every day, and this guy is there. How did you cope with seeing him in your presence? Dealing with, I'm sure, claustrophobia just for him being in your presence. And then you're being traumatized within yourself. You couldn't tell the parent, or you didn't tell the parent. How did you cope with it? Did he actually, I've heard victims say, because they didn't say anything, they got bullied by them. They did psychological threats towards them. They'd stare at them, say, don't you say anything. How did you cope with him being in your presence? Did you have any classes together?
we did. At the time, he laughed it off with his friends as, oh, I finally, got her in bed with me. Haha, that I'd been trying for a couple of months, and so of course now he's like a hero with his friends, and to me it was just easier to ignore and survive.
Very good.
That was the part I was saying, like I was a victim and then I was a survivor, and it's not until surviving isn't overcoming, it's doing what you have to do to get by.
Yes.
It's the minimum, it's the day-to-day, it's the keeping your head just right here before so you don't drown. But overcoming is coming to a place where you cope with it, you accept it, you make it a part of who you are, and then you heal from it, and then you say, none of this has power over me anymore.
Very good. Very good. Let me ask you this. So at 35, you finally told your mother. What did your mother say? Now this is age difference. This is what, 18 years later.
Yeah, 18 years later. My mother, because I come from a long line of very stubborn, very strong women. Very strong women. And my mother looked at me and said, wow, I never ever thought that I would have had to worry about that from you. I never ever thought that would be something that you would have allowed to happen. And to be honest, I always thought that would be something that I wouldn't have to worry about, and I always thought that would be something that I wouldn't have allowed to happen, because I am strong.
Yes, you are.
But,
yes, you are. Yes, you are strong.
But it's hard to know how you're going to react in that moment, and when that moment happened, I absolutely froze. I froze. When I even had somebody tell me, well, why didn't you fight back? I couldn't. I was paralyzed. I was frozen, and I was completely trapped in a body that wouldn't respond. That removed itself to preserve itself. And and I look back and I think, truthfully, why didn't I could have. I'm sure I could have taken him, but I could have struggled. I could have given him a run for the money, but I didn't, because I couldn't. I was physically incapable of doing it at the time.
And I've heard women describe it as similar to that they go into themselves. That's what most women say when they're being sexually assaulted, even domestic violence. They go into themselves, and I say, wow, that is just deep.
It's where it's safe.
So I say, when you say you go into themselves, they say they go into a safe place. That they can get through this moment, and then they come out of it, and that's how they deal with reality. So let me ask you this. Once you talked to your mother, I know that you were married. When you were in your first marriage, was your husband aware that you were sexually assaulted?
Yes.
How was that, and was that a part of the cause of your marriage, or? Well, I don't want to go too far. I'm just trying to pick and choose.
It was something that he chose not to deal with and chose not to address. And basically at one point in time he said, well, I don't know why I should have to pay for something that happened before you met me. And it was one more challenge and one more hurdle that I had to overcome.
And so let me ask you, this current day, do you still struggle with this?
Yes and no. There are triggers. There are things that can happen out of the blue that I'm not even expecting or aware of, that take me back to a place where, okay, and it incites a feeling or a memory or a flashback, and I have to deal with those things when they come. But I know how, and a lot of things that I know are part of my nuances because they're my new normal.
Very good.
I plan for and I take care of and I can deal with on a normal daily basis. So, does it ever affect me? Absolutely. It would be crazy to think that it doesn't.
Right.
But it's something that I've learned to deal with, and it's something that I'm fairly, like, I would say about 98.5% successful in keeping at bay. And when it does happen, I know how to deal with it.
That's so awesome. Isn't that awesome? Come on, y'all. I'm going to pause for quick. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And I'm going to open it up and ask, because I could see them antennas like this, because I want to go further, but I want to opt them an opportunity because I could feel the atmosphere.
Just leave me a couple minutes because I have a great ending.
Oh, yes, we are. How many minutes we got? 7 minutes. So we're going to open up for a couple questions, and then just 2 questions, and then we're going to allow her, because I know some of the closing because she showed me it. Any questions out there? I know there's some out here.
I have more of a comment
Yes.
than a question. I'm really saddened that, and I'm glad you brought this up, the comments that people made to you.
Yes.
You internalized at a point in your life that you were so vulnerable as a 17-year-old, having just gone through that, and how that still impacts you when you reflect back, when you even just comment, maybe there was something physically I could have done. And I think people really need to focus on how they talk to people who have survived what you have been through. And I really admire you for your willingness to share this story with people, because it's very powerful and it's a message that people need to hear. They can see you are a strong woman and you've overcome, and you should be proud.
To address that, one of the things that I've learned in researching it is that a lot of the reason why people, even women, even girls, will say, well, were you this, were you this, were you drinking with, did you lead them on? It's because, if we can identify a reason, if we can identify, well, if you weren't drinking, then you wouldn't have been raped, then I can go forth and say, well, if I don't drink, this is not going to happen to me. It escapes reason, but people are grasping at, how can I prevent it? And if I can pinpoint a reason that you were raped, that it was your fault, then I don't do that, and then I don't have to worry about it. But in reality, it's not that easy. It happens because somebody feels entitled to something that's not theirs.
And that's the truth on that, because a person could be walking down the street and could be sexually violently assaulted.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question?
In retrospect, can you share something that parents, friends, have you, could say to someone when they come that would be beneficial, helpful, supportive when someone comes to them in a situation?
Well, I think for parents, just letting your kids know, if you get in trouble, if something happens to you, I want you to come to me. And even if I'm angry at you, or even if I'm, think that, even if you were somewhere you shouldn't have been, or you were drinking or whatever, I'm not going to deal with that right now. My most important goal is you.
Yes.
And I told my kids that, if I don't care if you can give me 5 reasons why you shouldn't have been there. If something happened to you, I want to know. We can deal with that when it's time.
Yes.
Because my main important goal is your emotional health and your physical health.
Yes.
And so giving kids that freedom, I think, is a good start. But for anybody, like I said, it's not your fault. And a lot of times a rape victim will have to hear that about 100 or 1,000 times.
Yes.
It's not your fault. You did not do this.
Yes.
And to acknowledge the violation. Somebody hurt you.
That's it.
Somebody violated you. And just, the same thing we do over and over again as a chaplain. Listen, I'm here if you want to talk about it. I'm here if you don't want to talk about it. I will sit here and let you cry on my shoulder. I will sit here and let you stare into the silence while I sit next to you. Or I will listen if you want to tell me something. Just, I'm here for you. And, that's really, it seems so simple, but in a nutshell, that'll do it.
Yes.
It's not your fault. Somebody else did this to you, and it's their fault. And I'm here for you, whatever you need.
And one key thing I've learned with dealing with victims in that area, I work with them because a lot of times they be in the hospital for at least a couple days. You get a chance to go back and talk to them. But I said the key word is the stages of grief acceptance. You have to accept this has happened to you. And guess what? You can never change it. But accepting it is the beginning of freedom.
Amen.
That's when the door opens and you can actually face reality and say, hey, I was in this situation and this happened to me, but it's not going to keep me down. Because I accepted I didn't have control of it and it happened. But this happened to me. 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm going to share with you two of my favorite endings to this story, and one of them is as a chaplain. Early on, I got to sit with a woman who had been raped, and I was kind of going through it myself, rehashing it with my counselor and everything. And I looked at this woman, and she was devastated, and she had tried to kill herself because of she couldn't handle going through this. And I looked at her and I said, I don't know what you've been through, but I know what it feels like to be assaulted, and I know what it feels like to be raped. And she looked at me, and her tears stopped crying, and she looked up and she said, really, you were raped? And I said, yeah. And she goes, and you made it through? And I said, yeah. And she goes, so there's hope. And in those three, it was funny because in those 3 words, so there's hope, it made me realize that if I had it to do over again, I would let it happen all over again, just so it could give hope to other women.
Jesus.
And I've had the opportunity. We get to sit with a lot of rape victims.
Yes, we do.
And I don't even have to say anything. I just say, I've been there, and I know that it's the worst thing you'll probably ever go through. But I made it through, and I think you can too. And that right there is enough. And another quick little thing is, my daughter has come with me through a lot of my healing and a lot of, and we've had a lot of conversations. And
Beautiful.
while she was in high school, she chose, they have a 2-year senior project, and she chose to do hers on sexual violence awareness, and was even met with a little bit of resistance from academia. And she told them, basically, she looked and said, listen, 1 in 6 girls are raped by the time they're 18. 1 in 6 girls are raped sometime in their life, half of them before the age of 18. And she looked at her counselor and she said, that means 33 of our students right now will be raped before they leave the school. And I think they should know how to deal with it. And her counselor said, okay, and she did a whole big presentation on sexual violence awareness, how you can help, what you should and shouldn't say. And so many people, students and adults, came up to her and were saying, thank you for doing this. And it's just really exciting to me to see the little seeds continue on to be planted.
So we're going to ask you to close in prayer. It's so powerful, isn't it?